Shavua Tov, Kodesh Tov, will begin to expand our understanding of the Base Hamikdash. We'll speak about the Base Hadeshen, which is paragraph number Samach Gimel. And this was a place for Trumas Hadeshen, which was a daily mitzvah. The Torah says, Vayikra, Perek Vav, Veherim es Hadeshen, Asher Tochal ha'esh es ha'olah al ha'mizbeach, V'somo eitz al ha'mizbeach. And the Trumas Hadeshen was done by taking out the Deshen from the Mizbeach and putting it in the Trumas Hadeshen, in the Lishkas Hadeshen, which is also known as the Base Hadeshen. And if you imagine the Base Hamikdash as entering in from the Mizrach, going towards the Mairav, and the Durham is on your left, the Kevesh that was the ramp that led you up to the Mizbeach was on your left, meaning on the Tzad Durham. And immediately on the left side, meaning on the Mizrach side of the Kevesh, there was a Beis Hadeshen. And the Beis Hadeshen was actually contiguous. It was only 3 Tvachim distant from the Kevesh. And it was located 22 amos away from the head of the Mizbeach, which is more or less the size of the Kevesh. The Kevesh was 32 amos, and this was 22 amos. So it was, let's say, if you go up the Kevesh 10 amos, then immediately on your right side, which is the Mizrach side, that's where you found the Beis Hadeshen. And as I said before, it was only 3 Tvachim away in distance from the Kevesh itself. On a daily basis, the Torah says, Veherim es Hadeshen, and the Kohen would, in the morning, be Mekadesh Yodav V'Raglov Ben Akiyar. He would take a silver machta, and the machta, if you remember, was that shovel that he used for the Trumas Hadeshen to remove the ashes of the korbanos from on top of the Mizbeach. He would separate the ashes on the top, one from the other, and that would give him an access to the deepest part of the Deshen where the Afer was completely burnt up. There was nothing left. He would go up the Kevesh to the top of the Mizbeach, as we said, traveling a distance of 22 amos. And there, he would be Mafana Gecholim on top of the Marocha, Lakan Ulakan. He would dig in with this machta, and Magbia, he would lift up the machta with Gecholim from the depths of the ashes, and that would be a guarantee that he had that which nisakel. Nisakel means there was nothing left to the basar, it was completely burnt up, and it was deshen. Then he would go down the Kevesh on his way down, and he got close to the Ritzpas HaAzara, and at that point, he would turn towards his right. Let's see if we have it. Yeah, right, because as we said before, the Beis Hadeshen is located on the Mizrach, on the eastern side. So he's now traveling up the Kevesh from south to north. That was the paradox that we kept mentioning earlier, that in all the diagrams of the Beis Hamikdash, you're going to see the Durham, the south, on the top. That's because you're going from Mizrach to Marav. And he goes up the Kevesh, and then when he comes down towards the bottom of the Kevesh, where he started his trip, he will find the Beis Hadeshen immediately to his right, just 3 Tvachim away on the eastern side. And that's why it says, Yorad Derech Mizracho Shel Kevesh. Apparently, you could go down the kevish on its western side, on its eastern side. Here we go on its eastern side because he wants to put the deshen into the base hadeshen, which is on the east. And hafach panav, he would turn towards the mizbeach, and that's where he would put the deshen in the base hadeshen, and he would walk another, let's say 10 amos plus, down to the end of the ramp. And we also have to emphasize that this place where he put the deshen would have other functions. It was multifunctional. Number one, in the what's called the olas ha'of, which is a sugya unto itself, they took the maros ha'of, which are various parts of the kishkis of the bird, of the olas ha'of, and that would be placed also as refuse in the Beis HaDeshen. Then there was another mitzvah called Dishon Mizbeach HaPnimi. Remember, we have another Mizbeach inside the Heichal, the Mizbeach HaZav, and whatever Gechalim were left after the Haktaras Haktores, which was daily, twice daily in the Mizbeach HaPnimi, and those Gechalim were now Nisaklu, again, they were all burnt down, he would take that off and put it in the Beis HaDeshen. And then we have the menorah, where after the end of the candles they were lit, there was she'eris, there was leftover shemen, oil, psilos, other wicks, and these had to be cleaned out and placed in the Beis HaDeshen. So the Beis HaDeshen was a multifunctional location. Now, last week we mentioned that there were shulchanos, that were tables located near the Mizbeach. One, we said, was made of marble, if you remember, and that's where they put the chalev, the chalavim, in preparation for Haktar al Gabi Mizbeach. There was another table that was made of silver, and that's where they would place the 93 klei hashares that they needed on a daily basis for the avodas hamikdash of that day. We spoke about the kiyar, which had 12 faucets. Each one was used and for kiddush yadayim ragleim, before the kohanim would go to the avodas hamikdash. And this was situated between the ulam and the mizbeach. Then, next to the kiyar, we said there was a bar, a cistern of water. Shal yado hayu mashkiim es hakiyar b'layl b'socha bar. This has to do with what's called a psul of lina. So if there was water already in the kiyar and it wasn't used up during the course of the day, even after the kiyar shadayim reglaim of all the kohanim that would serve on that day, they took the whatever was left in the kiyar and they actually submerged it into this bar, because this bar was below ground. And the meimei bar are considered like mayim chayim. So we take the water that's in a kli, which, meaning the kiyar, which now would be subject to lina if we leave it overnight, and we submerge it into this bar, and that would circumvent the problem of lina. Now the Gemara in Masechta Yoma says that these three dishuns, we spoke about the dishun of the menorah and the others that we mentioned earlier, these were all nivlaim b'makom. They would be absorbed by the ground, swallowed up by the ground in a miraculous way. And some Rishonim say that the Trumas HaDeshen from the Mizbeach HaChitzon was also swallowed up miraculously, and that's an issue. We spoke, if you remember last week, about the fact that there were 12 steps in front of the ulam, and that would link them from the ulam to the azara. and we said that they covered an area of 22 amos. And we spoke about the height of each one of these 12 steps. Now, in the picture that I have, they draw it as a semicircle, that these steps were in a semicircle, and it took you to the Azara. Now, just 1 second. Why does he mention the Azara here? Just 1 second. Shalom Dako Mikarka Azara El Ha'ulam. Oh, I understand. He's saying that, you remember we discussed the great lengthy ulam, which was a very long area, and that ulam would connect you from the Hechal to the Azara. And you would climb down steps to go from the ulam into the Azara. These 12 steps. Now, again, I said that you climb down these steps. That's if you're already in the Hechal and you're going down into the Azara. But in the other direction, obviously, if you're going from the Azara up to the Ulam, you're going to be climbing these 12 steps. Oh, that's what he means when he says, Sha'olu darkam mikarka ha'azara el ha'ulam. Okay, so the Azara, which is on the east relative to the Hechal, which is on the west, you're climbing up because the western side of the Migdash was higher than the eastern side. Now, the Ulam, which again in the picture is this long area, which we said was 100 amos long from south to north. And it was only 20 amos wide, so it's much longer than it's wide. And apparently, which I don't know, in this picture, I guess it's this black, thick line that goes all around the Ulam. I have a feeling that that is going to be the Kosel HaUlam. Just see if he clarifies that in the picture. Let me just see what Samach Tes is, just for a second here. Oh, that's just the Pesach HaUlam. Okay, I'm going to assume that this black line that surrounds the Ulam is the Kosel HaUlam. Wait a minute, what's Tzadi Aleph? Maybe that'll... Kosel HaUlam, he says, is Samach Ches in this picture. Trouble is, how do you find Samach Ches? All right, the Samach Ches is sort of like floating in midair in this picture, but I think it's reference to this black line that goes and surrounds the entire Ulam. So he says that the Orech HaKosel, obviously if the Kosel is going to surround the Ulam, so in terms of its length, we said that the Ulam itself is 100 amos long from north to south, and the same is going to be true for the Kosel Ulam. Now, how tall was this Kosel Ulam? It was 100 amos tall, and the thickness of the Kosel was 5 amos thick. So you're talking about a very impressive structure, this Kosel Ulam. He says, Pirut midos ha'ulam v'hechal mefurashim b'mishnah b'midos perik dalet. So he's not going to go through all the details here about the various midos of the ulam and the hechal. But we do have a sense of the midos of the ulam, 100 amos long, 20 amos wide, with a kosel that surrounds it, that's 100 amos tall, and a thickness of the kosel which is 5 amos. Oh, we also want to add that in addition to the length of the kosel, there's the height of the kosel. The height of the kosel is 100 amos. This is a major structure. I guess you don't see it so much in the diagram, which is two-dimensional. But if you look at this picture of the model of the coast of the Base Hamikdash, so what you'll see is that there's this open area called the Azara, and the Mizbeach is more or less situated in the middle of the Azara. On your left side, which we said was the Darom side, you have the Kevesh that leads you up to the Mizbeach, and then in front of the Mizbeach, as you get closer, you're about to enter into the Ulam. So the Ulam is that long area that goes from north to south or south to north, and it's a roofed area. So what you're seeing, I think, in the picture is the kosel of the Ulam, and it's 100 amos tall. Now, beyond that Ulam, we're going to get into the Heichal, and as we move towards the west, we're moving towards the Kodesh Kodshim. So that's exciting when you can see the connection between a flat diagram and a model picture of a three-dimensional model of the whole layout. And it's interesting that if you look carefully at this model, you will see that the steps are going up towards the Ulam, which means that the Karka HaZara is lower than the Ulam. And you're going to climb these 15 steps. Now, if we assume that each step is a half an amma, am I correct? Let me just go over that. We did that last week. Each step is a half an amma. So if you are climbing up from the Karka Zara into the Ulam, you are climbing 6 amma because there are 12 steps, each of which had a height of a half an amma. So the distance between in climbing from a lower plateau, which is the Karka Zara, to the higher plateau, which is the Ulam, is 6 amos. He doesn't say that, but I think that's what it comes out. Now there's an opening to the Ulam. We call it a Pesach Ulam. And in the model picture, you could see it. It's very hard to see it, but you could see it. And if we go back to the flat two-dimensional diagram, right, to draw a plan, you will see here's the Pesach Heichal, and the Kosel, which is that massive wall that we spoke about, has one section that's not closed. That's going to be the section on the east where you come into the Ulam, up those steps from the Azara, and that is called the Pesach HaUlam. Now he says that the Pesach HaUlam is 40 amma. So what that would mean, we go back to the picture. You got to fly back and forth here. When you're looking at the picture of the model, you'll see that the height of the Ulam is way, way beyond that little Pesach. Again, the little Pesach is not so small. It's actually 40 amos in height, but keep in mind that the kosel itself is 100 amos. Now, the width, he says, of this Pesach HaUlam is 20 amma. Okay, 20 amma, that's not much. And there were no doors. The only veil, so to speak, separating you from the Azara to the Heichal, meaning from the Azara to the Ulam, was simply a paroches rekuma It was weaved bitzitzin uprochin. I wish I had a picture of this. Do you have a picture of this? It sounds like it's very, very artistic. In the picture that I have, there's no parochas over here. Let's just see if in any of the other pictures. No, I don't see it. I'd like to see a picture of this parochas. He says, the 5 koros shel eitz, and there were 5 beams of long wood. Bahem afotzim mitzuyoros hayinesunos al Pesach linoi. Okay, this is something that we touched on when we were learning Eruvin. You remember that at the beginning of Eruvin, you have a korah that cannot be more than 20 amos high in the mavli. But we said that it could be above 20 amos if it has an amaltera. You remember those amalteras, those beautiful designs that catch the eye. So he's talking about the amaltera of the Pesach HaUlam and how beautiful it was. Now, again, the Ulam is a pretty significant area. You know, we said it was 100 amos by 20 amos. No, just 1 second. 100 amos by 40 amos. Let me just get that straight. No. I'm confusing with the Pesach Ulam. Yeah. So the Ulam itself was 100 amos in length from north to south. And in the width, that means going from east to west, it was 11 amos. Okay. Now, in this area called the Ulam, what was located? So, if you look at the diagram, there's something called a Base Hakalifos. There's a Shokhan Azov. There's a Shokhan of Shayish. And at the other end, there's another Base Hakalifos. So these are the 2 Shulchanos that were located in the Ulam. And again, this is not the 2 Shulchanos that we discussed before that were on the 2 sides of the Mizbeach. That's already in the Azara. Now we're already in the Ulam. And there's a whole machlokas about what Kedusha, what level of sanctity is the Ulam. Is it an extension of the Azara on the eastern side, or is it an extension of the Heichal on the western side? And these 2 Shulchanos, not the ones in the Azara near the Mizbeach, but in the Ulam, one was made of silver and one was made of gold. Okay? So this is not the same as the 2 Shulchanos in the Azara. One was made of silver, the other was made of marble. Here we have another one that's made of gold. I'd like to anticipate that the Shulchan made of gold had a special function. Let's see what happens. He says that when you enter into the Ulam and you turn right, you have a Shulchan. And what was that Shulchan functioning? When they took the Lechem Aponim from the Shulchan in the Heichal, they would place the Lechem Aponim. Again, it's no, my mistake. I was talking on the way out. Let's talk about the way in. In other words, they baked the Lechem Aponim, and they're not yet ready to take these new lechem aponim and replace the old ones. So they left it, they placed it down after it's baking on this shulchan shel kesef in the ulam. Lifnei shechniso solanicha al shulchan. Okay, so that is the shulchan of kesef. What I don't understand is in this diagram. They call it a Shulchan of Shayish. I mean, I don't understand that. It should be a Shulchan Shel Kesef. Here he says Shel Shayish. I mean, the Shulchan Shel Shayish, Shel Shayish would be back here in the Azara part, where the Mizbeach is. Okay, anyway. Now, what was the purpose of the Shulchan Shel Zav, can I know? He doesn't tell you. He says, Shulchan Echad Shel Zav, Bismol HaKnisa LeUlam HaYa'omed. So you enter into the Ulam and you turn to the left, which means you're turning south. And that's where you put the Shulchan Shel Zav. Oh, now he tells you what to do with it. Olaf hinichu b'Shabbos is halechem anitol me'al shulchan lifnei chalukasa l'kohanim. This is the shulchan on the way back. Now, why is that shulchan made of gold? Let's see if he adds anything. He quotes the Gemara in Menachos. Shnei shulchanos hayu b'ulam mi bifnim al Pesach habayis. Here he says echad shel shayish v'echad shel zav. So I don't know why he says on top that one was made of kesef. I'm wondering if there's a mistake here in the print. Oh, I see. Guess what? There's a discrepancy between the Gemara in Menachos and the Mishnah in Shkolim. The Mishnah in Shkolim says that one of these two shulchanos was made of kesef. So he says that Rashi says Hoya shel shayish shel shenikra shel kesef me'achar ve'ashayish lavan kekesef. So when it says in Menachos that the shulchan on the ingoing lechem aponim was made of silver, I mean it had the color of silver, but it was a white marble. The Ravid, on the other hand, claims that there was no such thing as a marble shulchan in the ulam. It was a silver shulchan. And when it says shayish, that's just a mistake. So I was going to erase the word kesef. The Ravid is erasing the word shayish. But let's just think for a moment if we could figure out why would the shulchan on the way out have more chashivus than the shulchan on the way in. Oh, I see. Maybe he's saying that once they were makayim the mitzvah of lechem aponim, and this set of 12 loaves of bread already sat on the shulchan in the heichal for a full week, it was sanctified with the full kiyum and the kiddush of the lechem aponim. And now we take it out, we divide it amongst the Kohen, and every Kohen was lucky if he got Kapul al-Lavhan. And it's already been sanctified, and the mitzvah has been fulfilled. So we want to upgrade it now. And before we divvy it out amongst the Kohen, we want to put it on a more significant shulchan, namely the Shulchan Shel Zav. That's my guess. And then we have something called the Base Hakalifos, which we said there were two on each end of the ulam, and that in Mirza Shem B'li Neder will pick up tomorrow.